I was born in Poland, central Poland.
In which town?
Hergh, near Lodz,
Near Lodz. And
Yeah.
and what year was that? Were you born?
1928.
1928.
So I'm 90 now.
You're 90.
Yes.
Is this your first March of the Living?
Oh no. It's my sixth time.
Your sixth time on the March of the Living.
Yeah.
So, what brings you to the march? I mean, why do you feel a duty to be here for the march?
Because I've lost my whole family. And to me, I've got a thing to do, something for the March of the Living. Because during the war, I've lost my whole family.
Tell me a little bit about your story and how that happened.
Sorry.
Tell me a little bit about your story and your experience.
I was taken away at 11 years old to my first camp in a place called Otoczno near Poznań. Because I came one night for my father and he escaped, then came back for my brother and he escaped middle of the night, and then it was my form. I didn't escape. And they took us, 2,500 men, they took us to the Poznań region. We were building the railway line for the attack on Russia. And took about 18 months to build. We're under the SS. And out of 2,500 men, there was only 11 people left alive when the railway line was finished. And the camp commander sent me home. Never been heard of. In 1942, because I used to look after his house and after his office. I used to clean it and so on. And he actually sent me home. Never been heard of before.
It's a tremendous act of individual kindness.
Very. He didn't talk to me very much, but he was just told me to do this and that, and then suddenly in 1942 he sent me back home.
And where did you go?
Back home to Hergh. And when I got back, my father was caught and taken to another camp, didn't know where. And my mother was at home, and my brother and my two sisters. And I wasn't home 1942, and the Germans liquidated Hergh of all the Jews. They took us to a church, was run by nuns, and we were there about 6 hours, and then they told us to come out. I asked, "What's your profession?" I told them I was a tailor. Sent me back in the church, and they picked out 150 people, different jobs and so on, and we went back in the church. And eventually we were 4,000 people in the church without any water, without any toilet facilities, without any, it was horrendous. And they kept the people there for about 12 hours. And after I went into the church, I was so thirsty, and I said to my mum to give me a utensil, I'll try and get some water. And when I got back to the gate of the church, the assessment shouted at me, "What's your profession?" I said, "A tailor." Told me to get out and join the 150 people. And we went to Lodz ghetto, the 150 people. And when I was in Lodz ghetto, they demanded 10,000 children up to the age of 14, which I was in it, and to be sent away. And children hid, and the parents were caught, and they were shot for hiding their children, and so on. They says. And eventually they got the 10,000 children. They sent them to Hergh, where they gassed them and then buried them in mass graves, 3 mass graves. And I went to Lodz with the people. And when we arrived in Lodz, it was surrounded by barbed wire and guarded by soldiers with guns. And eventually I got a job working in the textile mill, and I went into the orphanage, children similar age to me, and I was at the 1944. 1944, they liquidated the Lodz ghetto of 160,000 people, and in goods trains, and we landed up in Auschwitz here. And when I got here, he asked me, the high-ranking officer asked me, "How old are you?" I said, 17. I was only 14. And what's your job? I'm a locksmith. To the other side. And that's how I saved myself.
Yeah, did you know anything about being a locksmith?
Not a thing, not a thing. I had no job at all. I didn't know about any job. I was only about 14. I told him I was 17. And I got my number on my arm, and B7608.
What were the conditions like at Auschwitz? Can you explain that? Describe it?
I'll tell you in a minute.
We're here with Arek, Holocaust survivor. He's showing us now. I don't know if we can see it. If we can zoom in with the camera. B7608. The numbers that were put on your arm at Auschwitz.
And this was also, we had the one here, the same number, and also on the trousers. We slept 10 people on the bunk, on one of the beds, and no mattresses, no cushion. For cushion, we rolled up our clothing and put it on our head. People died during the night, and it was horrendous. I was here about, after 3 weeks, I was taken to a stone quarry. I used to work in a stone quarry. Afterwards, I was chosen to work on agriculture because it was 30 kilometers big, Auschwitz, when it was finished. And for 3 months I worked in agriculture with the horses, and then they picked me to work in a fishing commando. We used to catch fish with nets, and afterwards we used to go home to our barracks, and after that the fishing commando wasn't like you catch fish and you take it home. It wasn't like that at all. It was for the German too. We used to send it away to Germany in tankers, in water makes its own. And I've worked there till January 1945, and then the liquidation of Auschwitz came, and we were taken on the death march. Anybody which couldn't walk was shot in the back of the head. Special assessment walked behind us, and after 2 days walking, we had pajamas on. It was minus 25 degrees cold, and we walked in wooden clogs. And after 2 days we came to a railway station. They put us onto a wagons, and after 2.5 days we arrived in Germany, a place called Buchenwald, near Weimar, and there we had the first shower in 6 months, and they gave us different clothing. Because here we only had one shower when we first came. And there, eventually they put us in with Russian prisoners of war, because the Russians weren't on the Geneva Convention, so they didn't class them as soldiers. And they put us into the barracks with the Russian prisoners of war. And then after 4 days somebody came and took our young people out and took us to Block 66. And we didn't work in Buchenwald, but we didn't get an extra food either. We're about 1,000 young people there. And then we, after that, I was there about 3 months. Then on the loudspeaker, they put on that all these barracks have got to come out, and ours was one of them. And they took us to Weimar, 8 kilometers away, took us to the railway station and loaded us onto open wagons. And they took us around for the whole month on open wagons. Very rarely gave us any food. We had grass. I also bent my shoe just to survive. For 4 weeks we were on open wagons. We started with 3,000 people and we finished off about 650 in Czechoslovakia on the 4th of May 1945. And 4 days later our train was taken into Theresienstadt and we liberated 4 days later by the Russian army on the 8th of May 1945.
Tell me a little bit about your faith during the process, your faith in God during the process.
We couldn't keep up with any faith or anything like that. There was 1 or 2 Hasidim which they said the prayer, but most of the people didn't.
What was the feeling? What would go through a person's head, during this process?
How to try and get out and to be liberated. And we knew the war wasn't going well for the Germans. About 500 bombers passed through here, American bombers and British bombers, and they just passed. They loaded with bombs and they went to bomb other places. And it was very difficult to keep up your religion at all.
Can you tell me how it feels to be here at this site where such horrific atrocities took place and where you yourself were back in 1944-45?
I come here every year for the last 7 years, and I try to help the young people and to tell them what's happened. And I talk now to different schools, universities and so on, and also the Holocaust Museum in England. And life goes on. I'm 90 years old now and hoping that I had a great-grandmother lived till 107 before the war. Maybe something will happen to me like that.
And what's your hope for the students that you speak to here at the March at universities?
The students, they ask a lot of questions and I tell them, give them a lot of answers, and life goes on, and I'm invited a lot to schools, universities, and I talk a lot to people in respect of that, and hoping that it will one day it will get to the people what actually we want out of life, and basically that's it.
Well, it is my hope that we certainly never witness atrocities like we witnessed only 80 years ago. Arek Hergh, thank you so much for sharing your story and for coming once again on the March of the Living. God bless you.
You're welcome.